Thanks, everybody. Thanks. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri, and our next guests are the directors and two subjects of two incredible short-form documentaries produced by RYOT Films. We have Kamali, directed by Sasha Rainbow, which is about a young Indian girl and her proclivity towards skateboarding, and Lowland Kids, directed by Sandra Winther, about Chris and Juliette Brunet, a family in the midst of the climate crisis. First, let's take a look at Kamali.
இந்த மாதிரிலாம் இருக்கு உடனே எனக்கு இப்போ கல்யாண லைஃப் நல்லா இருந்துச்சுங்க அவட்ட அப்படியே வீட்டில் வச்சுன்னு இந்த ஒன்று என்னை வளர்த்தா மாதிரியே 13 வயசில் உள்ளே வச்சுட்டு வளர்த்துருப்பேன். வளர்த்து இன்னொருக்கிட்ட கல்யாணம் பண்ணி ஒரு 17 வயசில் கல்யாணம் பண்ணி கொடுத்தேன். பொன் கிளியே நம்ம மாதிரி நம்ம பொண்ணே வந்து கூண்டுக்கிளியே இருந்து வளர்க்கக்கூடாது. நம்மளே ஸ்கேட் போர்ட் பண்ண சொல்லுவாங்க. நிறைய பேர் பார்த்துட்டு சொல்லுவாங்க உடஞ்சிச்சுன்னா யார் வந்து She's very pretty. She's very pretty. Pretty Priya. Pretty Priya. என் செல்லக்குட்டி கமலிக்கு நான் உனக்கு ஒரே ஒரு அட்வைஸ் தான். அதே மாதிரி பயப்படாத.
Everybody, please put your hands together for Sasha Rainbow, director of Kamali. Hey.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for being here. Congratulations on this beautiful film. First and foremost, I think me saying at the top that it's about a little girl with a proclivity towards skateboarding is a bit of a misnomer. That's not really what it's about. That's very much just the surface. It's actually about the mother, this woman who we hear the voiceover of in this trailer, who is sort of dealing with the fact that her daughter has a little more option and flexibility than she had in her life, and what that feels like to watch. So how did you come across Kamali, and when did you realize that Kamali's story was really her mother's story?
Right, so I came across her when I was making a music video about featuring the 20 skateboarders from India, the girls who are skateboarding, and I'd seen this little picture of Kamali with bare feet going down a ramp, and I thought, I can't do this without her. And her and her mother left the village for the first time and came to Bangalore. And it had been a funny kind of shoot, but when she got there, they arrived at night. She arrived in bare feet with a skateboard as big as her, and the energy just shifted. And we didn't have much budget, and so they stayed with us. And by the end of the trip, I'd got to know her and her mother's story. And I knew that I wanted to come back to India, and that was going to be my first documentary that I was going to make. And I think that it really couldn't be anything but the mother's story in a way. Kamali represents, hope for the future, but it's really Suganthi's bravery to let us into their world and everything she's doing to sort of challenge the status quo in their society that, stands out.
Her reflections on her past are so powerful as we see these images of Kamali. Am I saying that? Excuse me, Kamali, right?
Kamali.
Yeah, Kamali. As we see images of Kamali freely skateboarding, freely learning how to surf, and this woman is speaking so beautifully and truthfully about her past and what it was like to be married off at a certain age and the kind of life that she was living. Were you expecting that at all when you started shooting? Did you have a sense of what her story was?
Well, because I'd met them about 6 months before we got back there, I did have an idea of the story. I think probably it was more the other way around. They didn't expect that we were going to be in their house, for just under a month, every day when they woke up, every day before they went to sleep. And, that was the kind of surprising thing.
That said, it seems like they took to it quite well. I mean, by the end of the movie, there is a sense that she feels as though you are family by the way she's addressing you on camera. Whether that was the beginning or end of the shoot, I don't know.
I think we established that relationship the first time we met.
Yeah.
But really, I think that's what was so special about the situation. It was the bravery of Suganthi to open her doors to our home, knowing that this was an opportunity that came knocking on her door to do something different. And she didn't know what the results would be. She didn't know what we were even really doing. But at the end, when she saw the film back, she was like, I have just seen my life flash before my eyes. This is beautiful. So.
And you said that Kamali is in the sense, a hope for the future. Can you open up? Can you establish a little more, talk a little more about that?
Well, she's living proof that if we do things differently and we allow, especially in cultures where girls have less opportunity to explore the world than boys, Kamali is an example of what happens when we allow girls to kind of follow their passion. And what we're seeing now is just incredible. When we first went out there to film, we really wanted to show how much Suganthi was up against. She had basically the whole village saying, what you're doing with your daughter is wrong. You're embarrassing yourself in the community. But through this process of making the film, in India, it's done pretty well. Which is wonderful, which means a lot. And the community is starting to see that actually there are a lot of positive things coming out of this. And what we're seeing now is little girls being allowed to start skateboarding, and Kamali's teaching them. So, I mean, yeah, she is the living example of what happens when one person is brave enough to just say, you know, I'm going to do something differently.
You know, as much as she opened her doors and was open to it, was there any hesitance at any point while you were shooting for the month that you were there? Was there anything that was off limits?
She was as dedicated as we were to be open and honest. There was a point where she was like, Sasha, are you going to get me to talk about this again? You know, they're like, push it. But I think what was interesting, actually, and I think documentary has a tendency to do this, is the family were talking about things they'd never spoken about. They didn't all make it into the film, but, you know, Suganthi and her mother had a talk about what happened with her sort of being locked away as a child, and the grandmother was able to reflect on maybe the fact that she didn't do things as she should have. So those were really exciting moments.
It's amazing to watch skateboarding become the outsider art in other countries that it started as in the United States, and it still kind of is in a way, because you can pick up a skateboard and you can just go out there and start skateboarding, and that's how you get better at it. We do have leagues and sort of sanctioned things now that people can do. The X Games have become humongous, but it's incredible to watch it travel across the globe like this, and especially to a country like India, where a little girl like Kamali has just picked up a skateboard and started doing it. Do you know how she got started? Where she found the skateboard?
Well, the first thing is basically these are cultures where skateboarding is so new that it's only been around about 5 years, that it hasn't been established as a predominantly male sport. Right. So you have actually things like this happening in Afghanistan, Jordan, all these countries you wouldn't expect to see girls on skateboards, maybe. But it's actually surfing that first brought in the skateboarding culture about 20 years ago to this little fishing village. And it was the surfing culture which brought surfing tourism, which brought surfer culture, and then skateboarding.
Which is what happened in surfing begot skateboarding, yeah.
Exactly, and there was a famous skateboarder called Jamie Thomas, and he passed through the town, and he saw Kamali. She didn't have a skateboard. She was borrowing other little boys' skateboards, and she was gnarly, and he taught her how to drop, which is what we have in the film.
Where he's with her hands going down, yeah.
Yeah, and he stopped his tour, his skateboarding tour. He stayed for 2 days to teach her, and then he left India, and he left his board with her. Cool guy.
Yeah, that's incredible footage of him teaching her how to drop in.
Yeah.
I skateboarded for years when I was a teenager, and I never learned how to drop in. It's actually a quite scary thing to do, and it takes a fair amount of practice and work. You can get hurt. What was it like when you got your hands on that footage? I'm sure you must have been like, as the storyteller, must have been like, oh, this is kind of a centerpiece for our movie.
Actually, that comes up a lot because people cannot work out whether I was there for that long, but we were really, really lucky to have basically over 2 years of her from 6 years old to 8 years old learning to skateboard, which obviously became part of the film.
Right, but you didn't shoot that. Yeah, that's
No.
what I mean.
Yeah.
But I mean, having something that's like her practicing falling, and then accomplishing it is such a great sort of narrative device for a film. And you cut back and forth a little bit. When did you decide that would be sort of part of the structure?
Well, you know, Kamali is a 7-year-old child, which, I mean, most kids, it's the second documentary I've done with children, they live in the world and they accept the world around them. And I think it is quite hard without really going into their minds to know exactly what's going on for a child. And what I thought was so interesting was in the same way that her mother, Suganthi, had been trying to empower her, skateboarding is very much about sort of falling over, the inevitable failure, which is so special about this particular sport. You are going
Mostly
to fall.
failure.
It's mostly, I broke my hand last year skateboarding. You are going to fail, but if you're willing to dedicate yourself to it and pick yourself back up, you will get better. And I think I was trying to make a correlation between her mother's experience and picking herself up no matter what happened and pushing herself forward. So, I wanted to make a contrast between her daughter's own experience of that and hers as an adult.
Yeah, I love that shot when she falls off the ramp. Not because she falls off the ramp, but because a man from the village comes up and picks her up and sort of rubs her off where she fell down, and you can see the professional skateboarder hanging in the back with his head down, just so nervous he's about to get yelled at or the whole thing's going to get cut off. But eventually she jumps back on and starts going again.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to open this up to talk about our next film, Lowland Kids. But before we do that, let's take a quick look at the trailer.
What are you doing? I don't know how deep the water is. You want to test it out?
You want to find out?
Test it out for me.
What a rookie.
I wasn't sure how true it was that we were going to move, but then I talked to my uncle about it because I heard talk about it. And I was really shocked, actually.
Nobody really wants to leave their hometown. You know, like, this is, like, where we're from. Like, we've been here since we was kids.
This is the damage that was done by the oil and gas industry, by major hurricanes. I don't think nobody actually realized how bad it was. But then I think that by the time it realized that so much damage was done, I think it was too late to stop it. I didn't pack my bags yet because this here is still home. And so until things are finalized in a sense, well, there's no place like home.
He's kind of like my inspiration because, you know, after my parents' passing, I was there for us to hold on.
He teaches us how to do good things, stay out of trouble and stuff.
They've always been good kids. That actually made it real easy to be a parent.
This whole town's been changed and I don't feel the same.
Oh yeah! Good shot! The tree caught it!
Get away from here. Oh, we gon' get away from here.
Oh, you almost got him.
Miles! I just like that.
Howard, what are you going to miss about this place?
What I'm gonna miss?
Yeah.
Everything, man.
Everybody, please welcome director of Lowland Kids, Sandra Winther, and its subjects, Juliette Brunet and Chris Brunet. Please put your hands together. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Congratulations on this beautiful film that I think does a wonderful job of evoking a very specific place and the beauty and magic of it. How did you come across this story, and what was it like getting these two wonderful people to be involved in your film and to tell their story?
So one of the producers of the project, William Krause, and I were reading, just reading the news and had read about the $48 million grant that the state of Louisiana got to relocate the community of Ile and Charles, which happened under the Obama administration. Now that piece of land that you see in the actual film, this new site that this community is being relocated to was officially purchased of January last year. And so we thought there was a really interesting story here, but we didn't really have our subjects at that time. And so we went down to the island and we knocked on a lot of doors and met a lot of families. But ultimately, it was when I went to the Brunet's house and I got to meet Chris and Juliette and Howard that I felt like, wow, there's something really, really special here. And I think the more I got to know them, the more I also started to see, hey, there isn't just a climate change doc here. There's actually a story about a family going through a lot of change, like a sort of universal story of that. And yeah, they've been through a lot already, and this island is really all they have, or, you know, at least something that they do have that they're very attached to, and now that's being taken away as well. So I was very moved by that. And so,
You know, and what better way to go through a lot of change than to have a group of strangers document it for you with a video camera? So what made you comfortable with Sandra, and what made you decide to tell your story through her?
I guess that it was in their presentation, and they was very sincere because they kept coming back.
Persistence.
Yeah, persistence. So I guess we couldn't chase them away. But I'm glad we didn't, because they really proved their sincerity in wanting to get the message out about, you know, the changes to our environment.
And you know how some people come and go or whatever, but Sandra, Will, and everyone else, they were really good people, and they were nice. You know, it wasn't just all about the film; it was like about us too. You know.
You know, Jay, you're so articulate in the documentary about what's going on with your family and what's going on with the island or isle. Excuse me.
Island, you had it right.
Island. We
Yeah,
can call it an
yeah.
island. Okay. Idiot.
No, you're good.
You're so articulate about it. Most teenagers, and myself when I was a teenager, I was not articulate about anything that was going on with me, whether it was school, family, or emotion. I may have thought I was at the time, but I was just emotional. Whereas you are actually quite articulate. Do you feel like as a teenager you've had to think about these things more and grapple with them?
Well, yeah, because from me, like, growing up, I realized how different it is on the island, you know, like how much of a drastic change there actually is there. And after watching, like, all the films and all, you see it more, because, like, you realize, like, your land really isn't going to be there in so many years, you know? Yeah.
And what we're talking about here, I don't know if it was clear from the trailer or from us, but is that by 2022, all of the inhabitants of Ile de Jean Charles,
Ile de Jean Charles.
Ile de Jean Charles, Ile de Jean Charles are going to be relocated because by a certain year, basically the island will be swallowed by the ocean because of climate change.
Yeah, and there's one road that connects from the mainland to the island, and that road gets flooded very easily and often, and that's a huge thing. The state is basically saying we're not going to spend any more money on repairing this road, and we, you know, really need everyone to give up their house and move to this site. So that's one of the things, you know, that the residents are trying to figure out now, and also just making sure that the construction that's made on the new site lives up to their expectations of what their new community is going to look like. So that'll be interesting to see.
Chris, how long has your family been there?
We go back about 7 or 8 generations. So that place has been home for almost 200 years. And that's on both sides of the parents for most of the families down there, where we all relatives.
You know, one of the things that the documentary does so well is it evokes how beautiful the place is. So much of it has to do, I think, with it being beautiful, but also so many magic hour shots and people frolicking and in the grass and in front of the water and in front of the sunset and sunrise. What was it like to watch this cut together, watch your family in front of it, knowing that in 2 years you will be relocated? You're watching essentially a beautiful memory of this place.
Believe it or not, I'll be honest with you that watching this more than once, actually I'm learning something more myself, because like you say, you know, how does it feel to see? It's like, I just can't believe, you know, that is us, and that we can actually draw something from that, and yet we are personally impacted by that. So this year for me is actually a learning tool that of all things that's going on in many different places.
What about you, Juliette? What was it like watching the documentary for the first time?
More eye-opening than living on the island, actually, because, like, you just, like, you know, like if there's a film about it, then something really bad has to be happening, you know, like yeah, like if big changes must be happening.
Is there a sense too, you know, sometimes when I watch a movie about New York City, I recognize how beautiful it can be because when I'm living in it, I'm in it, my head is down.
You're used
you know.
of it, yeah.
Yeah. Did you feel like that when you were watching
Yeah,
this movie?
that's you said it perfect. That's exactly how I felt.
Really?
Yeah, because like, you know, like if you live there so long, you don't really see the changes as much as you would like, you know, like you would come in like from looking at a picture from, you know, like so many years ago to now. Yeah.
You know, there's I think I think it's you have a line in it where you say no one wants to leave their hometown.
Hometown, yeah.
Which is so interesting because a lot of people want to leave their. I wanted to leave my hometown, but I also didn't live on a beautiful island. When you look at something like this, knowing that you have to leave, what does that feel like, and what do you think when you hear yourself say that on screen?
Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
For sure, heartbreaking because, you know, like I said in the film, no one wants to leave their hometown, especially not me with how beautiful it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris?
Being part of a Native American community and that identity being a Choctaw Indian community, we're more attached to the land, you know, because of the life experience, you know. And anyone who has made their life living off the land would understand that. Yeah. And so your environment becomes very much part of your identity. So for us, the impact is really hitting us a little bit harder when it comes to discern whether we should move or not, because it's always been home. So it's a little bit more deeper than just having to leave because of what's happening in the environment, which we've always lived with, you know. But to make the decision to actually leave it is totally different than what we experienced, you know.
Do you have a decision that you can make? Can you stay if you elect?
Yes. It's not mandatory. It's a voluntary move if you want it. So there are some that are for it, some that are not, and then there's one like me that's still discerning it.
You're still deciding, yeah.
Yes, because it's always been home. So if I'm going to some other place, I want to be sure that I am able to carry that there too, and not just leave it on the island.
Yeah.
It has to be part of me.
For those who you said make their lives off the land, what is the plan for what they can do upon moving when they are relocated?
Well, a lot of us, you know, a lot of people from the island has already moved, not because of just relocation. So when it comes to getting back to work in the waters, well, you have travel time right there. Yeah. And so for those of them that are left that can still do that, but then they're gonna have to adjust to that if that's what they go to. So you know, along in time, you know, there's been different changes, you know, that did already come in place.
Sandra, I got a clear sense of your influences upon making this in terms of what you were trying to evoke. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think I think there's certainly a different way that the story could have been told. I think a lot of climate change documentaries sort of put like the science and the facts first, but we never necessarily really get to deeply know a family that's affected by this. And so I think when I set foot on the island and sort of got to see how Howard and Juliette live their lives, just waking up every morning and all they want to do is go outside and, you know, go hunting or fishing or, you know, go tubing on the bayou. Like, that's a really special, beautiful life. And I wanted to portray the island the way that they see it. I mean, in a way, this film is a sort of time capsule, you know, and I wanted it to represent what you guys wake up and see every day. I think from the outside, if you haven't been to the island, I think it can sound like, well, this is a sinking island. A lot of families have left already. You know, wouldn't you be happy to, you know, get a new house and, you know, move off this place? But once you go there and you actually spend some time there, you realize that this is a very magical place and there really isn't any other place like it. So.
That is a thought that people only have about other people and where they live. As soon as it is where they live and their lives, they want to stay or they want to fight it and they want to think, anytime it's anybody else, it's like, well, just get out of there. Just go do something else. And they never realize that that's not as easy as it seems, both emotionally and economically.
I think it's a it's maybe also one of the more optimistic documentaries that you'll see on the subject, because it really is just, you know, following your lives for a little bit, and just getting to see this attachment to the place, like how that actually comes out. And so it is a special way of living. I mean, there's so many young people today that just sit indoors scrolling through social media, but, you know, you guys maybe do that tiny bit, but not that much, really, you know? It's such a special, beautiful life, and it really shouldn't be taken away, so, yeah.
We have time for a couple questions from the audience. Who has a question right
Hi,
here?
so I was wondering what you hope people take away from your films.
Yeah, well, I hope that any woman who watches my film who's in an abusive relationship can watch and listen to Suganthi's story and be inspired to take steps to leave it. And I hope that any parents who are bringing up their boys and girls in different ways can watch Kamali's story and be inspired to allow, especially in India, the girls to play for the sake of playing.
I think that the Brunet family, or Howard and Juliette, are sort of the kids that we see. We're right now seeing a lot of young people, right, sort of like standing up to the government, demanding change. When it comes to climate change, I think we don't always get to see the kids that it is affecting. I mean, Howard and Juliette, I don't know if you guys have even considered showing up at a rally in Washington, but these are the kids that it's happening to. You know, Howard and Juliette, they are the last generation that will probably live on this island because it is vanishing. And so I hope it's at least, you know, a portrait of just one family that's affected. I hope that people can watch this and think like, wow, this is happening on U.S. soil. I maybe wasn't aware of the degree that it actually is happening. And hopefully it can remind people that this is something that's happening, yeah, in the U.S., not just in Louisiana, but many parts of the U.S., really.
One more.
Hi. I was wondering what it was like working with RYOT Films.
Excellent, amazing, wonderful. Everyone should do it. No, it's been great. I mean, and also just being able to have this experience together as two filmmakers with all of the team has been really, really lovely.
Yeah, awesome. They're awesome. I think they really understood what Sasha and I were trying to do with these films, and really appreciated, I think, also just the aesthetic, visual approach that we took to it, our narrative approach. And yeah, so it's been great just traveling around the U.S. and screening these films, and yeah, it's been awesome.
How can people see the films right now?
Huffington Post.
Huffington Post,
yeah.
HuffPost.com. People can check out Lowland Kids and Kamali. Congratulations on the films. They're beautiful. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming here and sharing your story, both in film and on our stage. We really appreciate it. Everybody give them a huge round of applause for being here. Let's hear it.